Can we have everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Next number, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Diane Anderson. I am an attorney here locally, and I will take the blame for not turning the microphones on. Didn't realize I had to ask for that. So I think, though, the acoustics are fairly good, and I think we'll be fine. I want to thank everyone for turning out. It's quite a good turnout. And just like school, we have a lot of front row seats, if any in the back row wants to come up and sit down. Okay. So I am president of the Amador County Bar Association. I also am a director in the Chamber of Commerce. And both of those are putting on this and sponsoring this forum tonight because we do feel that it is important for the community to hear the candidates of an election. But what I'm going to do is have Paul Stein is the moderator. And so we are on a tight time frame tonight, and so we're going to be running very strictly by the rules. And so I'm not going to waste time listing off Paul's many accomplishments. Suffice to say, he was a Calaveras County supervisor. You guys can all go on the website and check him out. But he has moderated these types of events before, and so we think he'll be doing a wonderful job for us. And I will be turning it over to him, but I do think it's really important that, first of all, anybody turns off, or everybody turns off their cell phones. Just a reminder, like we're in court. The other thing is, I think it's important that you guys know that it was the Bar Association members that chose to have a neutral moderator. Neither campaign asked for the moderator to be switched. Okay? And with that, Paul's done.
All right, thank you, Diane. I've advised both of our candidates here this evening to project and be as loud as we possibly can. Without the microphone, it will be a little bit difficult, but under kind of trial-worthy conditions, they have to speak in court anyway without a microphone, so it's simply kind of a test for them to do that. As Diane said, I am a neutral third party here, so I have no vested interest in this campaign. I have only met these two gentlemen this evening for the first time, so I think that impartiality should bear itself out as I conduct the forum this evening. But I do want to welcome everyone here this evening on behalf of the Amador County Bar Association, and I believe also the Chamber of Commerce is a sponsor of this as well. So on their behalf, we welcome you, and I'm going to set now the parameters for this evening, and I'll ask both of the candidates to basically agree to how we're going to conduct the proceedings. So what we're going to start with is the candidates will have 10 minutes for an opening presentation, and it was selected by coin toss that Steve Hermanson, the Deputy District Attorney in this race, will begin. The timer is Judy Giorgio. She happens to be my fiance, by the way. So she's also impartial. She'll be doing the timing. She will signal me when the appropriate time is about to expire, and I will let each of the candidates know when they need to sum up whatever particular question or presentation they're making. Following the 10-minute opening presentation, there will be 5 prepared questions to each candidate that were given to me by the Bar Association. They'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions, and again, it will be timed, and I'll be alternating back and forth between the candidates. So as Mr. Hermanson is beginning, the first question then would come to Mr. Seaton, and I'll continue to flip back and forth like that. The 5 prepared questions were selected by me from a list of 12 questions that were given to me from the Bar Association. So no one knows what questions are going to be asked until I recite the questions into the record for each of the candidates to respond to at that time. So even though they were prepared by the Bar Association, I'm the only one that knows what questions will be asked. Questions from the audience will then follow, and we'll try to get as many of your questions in as we possibly can. I would ask each of you that, and I'll remind you of this when we get to that stage, that each of the questions should be as brief as possible. Try not to make campaign statements or long-winded exposés of why you think one candidate is better or worse than another. Ask a specific question, and hopefully you can get a question that both of them then can answer. So I'll remind you of that when we get to that part of the program. There will be a final question from the Bar Association. Everything is going to continue to be timed. And then after that, the candidates will give a 5-minute summation. We'll flip the order of whoever went first the first time. So in this case, Steve is starting, so Jeff, you get to close with your summation when we get to that part. We're going to conclude exactly at 8 o'clock. And again, I would thank everyone for their courteous attention and participation this evening. Let's have a great debate and a great forum. And I'll now turn it over to you guys to begin your presentation. But before I do that, go ahead.
Super quick, and I apologize, and Sherry's probably going to get mad at me later, but I completely forgot to tell you guys, we have Dave Tierpak, who is videotaping, and the Amador County Bar Association has a Facebook page, and we're going to try and put this on YouTube, so you guys can watch it later too. So I just want to let you guys know that, and thank you very much for coming, and now sorry.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to assure from both candidates that the parameters that I've set for this evening you adhere to?
Yes.
You agree to?
Yes.
You agree to? Okay, then that's no problem at all. So without further ado, Deputy District Attorney Steve Hermanson will begin with his 10-minute presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Hermanson. I currently work for the Amador County District Attorney's Office. I'm a Deputy District Attorney there. And as I start this evening, I want to say thank you first off to the Bar Association for holding this event. I think it's a very wonderful thing, in particularly in a small county when you only have 2 judges, that you get the opportunity to have a forum where you can learn a little bit about us. It is imperative that you learn about us because who we are outside of that courtroom is as important as who we are inside of that courtroom. And that's what you need to take this opportunity tonight, is to ask us questions and learn about us. I'm going to start off by basically doing a TV show here. We're going to call it Mythbusters. I thank Diane Anderson for breaking one of the myths earlier. We didn't ask that the moderator be changed, as appeared last week in the paper. Second thing is, I'm not an ADA attorney. I am a deputy district attorney. I did do an ADA case in the past where I actually sued a school district for dropping a child in a bathroom and leaving her there for 45 minutes. I at no time in my career have driven by and sued businesses as an ADA attorney. I go by my middle name, which is Steve, and I've always gone by my middle name. 6 years ago, my wife and I were sitting on our front porch and decided that we needed to move to find a place to raise our children. So we looked for an area where there was a good sense of community, safety, and beauty. And we, quite by accident, were given an opportunity in Amador County. And when we came here, we felt compelled to move here. And that's where we've invested our children. I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and we are invested in this community. My wife of almost 13 years and I are dedicated to keeping this community the way we found it. Safe, a strong sense of community, and a beautiful place to raise our family. I see several issues on the forefront that we need to start looking at. And I don't think the judiciary is immune from that. The first is in the criminal area of the law. Last year we had what was called the Realignment Act, which was a nice way of saying that the state legislature pushed a lot of the administrative and functional duties from the prisoner standpoint to the counties. So individuals that last year we put in state prison, this year we have to put in county jail. The practical application for you as a community is that there is no room in the inn anymore at the jail. So our traditional concept of punishment has to change. The way we do business in the future in the criminal courts have to change. Last year we had 1,300 filings in the criminal arena. That will be severely impacted now. We will now have other obligations as well. Starting in 2013, we will now have to undertake the obligations of parole hearings. The judge will have to do that. So we need to be creative. The way we do things has to change. So the judge has to be willing to think outside the box. Do things differently than we've done the last 20 or 30 years. We don't have a choice. And in that regard, I would be willing to go into the communities, working with civic organizations, working with churches, to try and help develop programs in which we could serve individuals that need treatment. One of the major roles of a judge is to do community outreach. In fact, they talk about it in some of the judicial standards. And as a judge, I would take that extremely seriously. And I would go into the schools, because prevention has been shown to be the only avenue that works to reduce crime, in particular as it relates to drug abuse. The district attorney's office estimates that 70 to 80% of crimes relate back to substance abuse. So that is a huge underlying current that causes crime. So your domestic violence, your petty thefts, child abuse, we can trace that back, typically to methamphetamine or some of the other substances. We need to get back in the schools to start figuring out ways to keep kids from replacing the older individuals. If you look at some of the studies in Montana and Georgia, that has been the only thing that has worked to reduce crime long term. And as a judge, I would take that role seriously. Our children are our future. My children are our future. And it is imperative that we get in the schools to continue working with them. What happens when our criminal system gets impacted is it flows across to the other areas of the law. So the civil cases, the family law cases, the probate cases, the traffic cases, take a back seat. Last year there were 313 family law filings. Those individuals need their day in court as well. There were 6,000 traffic citations issued last year that this court dealt with. So we have to have the ability as a judge to deal with that amount of cases. Last year, for instance, we set aside 2 days a week in a department for a trial. In that department last year, only 2 trials were heard. That is a large amount of time, a large gap of time that is not being utilized, that we can be more efficient with the civil cases, with the family law cases, and with the probate cases. Court efficiency is the second thing we need to focus on. You need 2 courtrooms going at 120%, going as hard as they can, and dealing with all cases. And as your judge, I will deal with all cases. I will deal with civil cases, probate cases, family law cases, and criminal cases. I've been an attorney for almost 20 years. I spent 15 of it doing civil work. I'm comfortable in the civil arena. I've done probate, several hundred probate cases. I'm comfortable in the probate arena. I can make that more efficient. We can use better use of our calendars. We need to develop specific calendars as well. There are grants out there that I'm aware of the court is pursuing. One is for domestic violence. We need to follow through on that. We need to establish a calendar and get the grant and deal with that in particular. I've been talking for a year about veterans courts. That is an aspect that we need to check out. We've prosecuted several individuals in the last several years that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan. Their issues are different than my meth addict's issue. We need to recognize that and deal with that differently. We need to work with the American Legion. We need to work with the VA. They need to have an advocate there for them. And we need to develop programs specific to their needs. The final need I see in our county is to work on gaining trust in the judiciary. The judicial branch has to be completely unbiased. When you walk in that courtroom, you have to have the confidence in the judge that it doesn't matter what your gender is, what your race is, what your name is, that you will have a completely impartial judge. And ladies and gentlemen, as I stand before you today, I will look at each one of you and tell you I'm beholden to no one. When you come in my courtroom, I will take the facts as they are and apply them to the law. Not as I want it to be, but as it is. And I will judge completely impartially without a bias. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I too would like to thank the Amador County Bar Association and the Chamber of Commerce, both of which I am a member. And believe me, they did keep this procedure and the conduct of this entire forum secret from me. I even got kicked out of one of the bar meetings because they said, "Jeff, could you please stay outside? We're discussing the forum." Well, I gladly said yes and excused myself. I too moved to Amador County 20 years ago because of the quality of life, the quality of living. I lived in South Sacramento and was awakened many nights by drive-by shootings on I-5 and wherever else in the neighborhood. I moved here to become part of this community. I have become part of the community. I joined the Chamber of Commerce and the Amador County Bar Association, the Lions Club, back in the 90s, 93, 94. I've been a member of each of them throughout this time. Now, the Bar Association, it kind of comes and goes and gets strong and weak, but now it's strong, and I'm glad to see that. So I moved here to become part of the community and participate in the community. I've donated and supported youth activities since before I moved here. Even in Sacramento and the Pocket area, I sponsored Little League and other sports activities. I've sponsored activities for hospice, the youth, Little League, soccer, girls softball, cheerleaders, basketball, youth basketball, and I donate to the schools regularly when I get a flyer that they need some sponsorships for their program. What Mr. Hermanson is saying is actually correct. I mean, there's a lot here tonight that you're going to hear that's the same from both of us. There are problems within the judicial system, with our entire government. I just found out the other day that the governor cut the judiciary budget by $350 million per year, and it's a permanent cut. That's in his budget submitted this month. Where's that going to come from? It's going to come from counties like Amador County, the small counties. We're going to feel the squeeze. There's currently a bill, I think it's AB 1208, that is before the Senate now, and that bill is attempting to decentralize the fiscal budget that is distributed to the county courts by the administrative office of the courts. Now, the administrative office of the courts started out with a staff of about 200 employees, and within 4 years increased that to about 1,200. So guess where the money's going? It's called bureaucracy. We need to decentralize the bureaucracy. Let Amador County judges, the judicial system, manage our own judicial system, our own financial system, without Big Brother dictating what we can do, what we cannot do. Another area is the AB 109, as Mr. Hermanson referred. The average jail, the jail capacity in Amador County Jail, when it was constructed, was like 76. 76. Prior to October 1st, when AB 109, the realignment, was enacted, the average population of the jail was 80. Now, since October 1st to the current date, the average daily population of the jail is 98. So it's increasing. It's increasing because the prisoners that were at the correctional facilities in the California Department of Corrections, CDC, if they're there for nonviolent crimes or certain sex offenses, they're now being sentenced to county prison. That's Amador County. So that's another impact that the Sheriff's Department definitely feels. Fortunately, they're utilizing home electronic monitoring program. They're emphasizing sheriff's parole to try to get some of these inmates that are low risk back into the community with restrictions. Also, with the AB 109, if a person is sentenced to county prison for, let's say, a crime of theft or drugs, that person can be placed on courtesy supervision. instead of a parole board hearing a parole violation after that person will get out of jail, who's going to hear it? The Superior Court's going to hear it. So that adds additional cases to the calendar, complicating matters immensely. We need to develop programs in courts, calendars that are more efficient. One way of doing that is the domestic violence calendar. Currently, if a person, let's say a couple is getting a divorce, family law, somebody alleges that there's violence, and let's say one of the parties is charged with a crime against the other. So what you have is you have two cases, two systems. You have the criminal system and you have the family law system. I'm looking toward putting both of those cases, because it involves the same parties, same witnesses, same children, together in front of the same judge, rather than have one in each opposite courtroom, which is the way it is now. I also have spoken to Floyd Martin about veterans courts. And now there's a bill, I think it's 102, it's up in the Senate being addressed. It's already passed the Assembly. We need to tap into federal funds, whatever funds we can raise to help our veterans. They're over there defending our country with their lives. They come back from a world of war to a world of peace, but it's culture shock. And many of them get in trouble. We won't go into much detail about that. But we need to address specific calendars, specific judges for the people who have specific needs. Another area is that I'm contemplating would be have a DUI court or other misdemeanor type courts or trials, move those with the permission of the school district, permission of both parties, the district attorney's office as well as the defense and the court, move those trials to an educational setting. They're still a real trial, but the kids, the youth, the teenagers can see reality. They can see what really happens when someone gets convicted or someone gets injured. Now, the every 15-minute program, I've been involved in that a number of years. I wasn't involved in it this year, but I've been involved in that. I've been involved in mock trials. I've been involved with peer court. I've been involved a lot of these different programs, not on a continuous, regular basis, not trying to mislead anyone, but I've been involved in those. We need to pursue those. Also, we need, we need to look at tomorrow's future. And again, that comes with our youth. That's why we as a community need to come together as I discussed with the veterans, with different civic organizations who will raise funds, maybe AA, Narcotics Anonymous as well, and have our community come together. The judges are not responsible for a lot of these areas directly, but the judge as a community leader must assist and maybe even implement getting other community leaders involved and attack these situations, the fiscal as well as the programs that we're discussing, attack them as a community, not just from the legal perspective, but get the sheriff involved, the probation officer, the board of supervisors, the different city councils, and come together as a community. As your judge, I will do that. I have military experience. I'm retired from the military. I have 26 years in the Army, military police officer, as well as I was a social work psychology specialist early on.
1 minute, Jeff.
I've been a police officer, deputy sheriff when I got off active duty. So I've been in Arapahoe County, Colorado. I have that law enforcement experience behind me. I understand what it's like for our officers to be on the street. And now I have 22 years of experience as an attorney, and I'm very proud to say I'm a defense attorney. I defend the people. I protect your constitutional rights. If you're guilty, the courts will find you guilty, but let's do it by the Constitution and by the law. Thank you.
Okay. The second part of the forum, as I stated earlier, are going to be 5 questions that were prepared by the Amador County Bar Association They were selected at random by me, and I'm going to ask the first question to Mr. Seaton, as he went second in the opening remarks, so he will get to answer the first question first, which is, what crimes do you think have the biggest impact in Amador County, and what would you do as judge to address that impact?
I think the basic crimes that have a ripple effect are crimes of substance abuse. Substance abuse includes alcohol. It includes abuse of prescription medication. I have seen, without substance abuse, my criminal defense clients would probably shrink about 75%, maybe more. That's how much of a reality we have problems with substance abuse. What do we need to do? This is just exactly what I was referring to earlier. Let's get the youth involved. Let them see a real live trial. It's fun. They like to see the mock trial. They get to come to the courtroom. They get to meet the judge, lawyers, etc. But let's have them involved in a real trial so they can see what reality really is. From those substance abuse cases, also, we have domestic violence. We have theft crimes. We have sexual assaults. And those, again, are the ripple effect. We've got to focus on the nucleus of the crimes, and in my opinion, it's substance abuse. I don't want to repeat myself, but I will. We get NA, Narcotics Anonymous, involved, Alcoholics Anonymous. We have different, for instance, I'm going to pick on the veterans because they're here tonight. Maybe there's a couple of veterans that are having problems. Let's have their group come together and assist in counseling and assisting that person with his or her problems. And that goes with the domestic violence and other areas. Thank you.
Mr. Henderson, you have the floor. Would you like me to repeat the question? All right.
Methamphetamine has a 97% recidivism rate. So the practical application of that is if I put someone in jail for 60 days or 120 days, when they get out, I have a 97% chance they're going to get back in. So the traditional thinking of incarceration is gone. We have to start thinking in terms of treatment. But we don't have money. Right? So what we have to do is come together as a community. And that means going into the service organizations, going into Lions, going into Elks, going into Sir Optimist, and being willing to say, we need help. When NA and AA started, they weren't government-funded programs. We have a great example of a program in Amador County with the Interfaith Food Bank. It's not a government-funded program. It's the community coming together to address a need. That's what we have to do. Methamphetamine is a scourge on our county. And it is huge. We filed 1,300 cases last year. And as I told you, 70 to 80% of them we relate back to substance abuse. That's a lot of crime relating back. And the crimes extend out. Domestic violence, thefts, burglaries, petty thefts, driving under the influence. So we need to think outside the box now. It's time to start figuring out what will work. And the only thing that has shown to work in the future is with the kids. And it goes more than just a trial in a courtroom. We need to adapt the curriculum in the districts to be over a period of time. So these kids get exposed to the problems with drug abuse more than one day a year. Drugs are a very incredible thing for kids. A pill will fetch $20 to $40 on a high school campus. So we need to start engaging with our teenagers.
I'm going to get the next question up on the list, which is equal access to the courts important to you, and if so, why?
Equal access to the courts is imperative. I think that our Constitution is based on the concept of accessibility. That's what due process is. Accessibility to the court. And accessibility to the court means across the whole spectrum. The sound I don't like to hear, actually. Accessibility to the court, for the vast majority of you, will not be in a criminal system, except for whoever set off that alarm right there. We'll probably see them tomorrow. The vast majority of individuals in this room are not going to come in contact with a judge.
Hey, Steve, if you want to take some time.
Extra 5 minutes.
As I was saying, the vast majority of you will not come into contact with the criminal court as a defendant. You might as a juror, you might as a witness. But the vast majority of you will come in contact with the court in a civil proceeding, in a small claims action, in a traffic ticket, in a family law matter, or a probate matter. So accessibility to the court so that everybody, not just a defendant, gets justice. Justice comes in many forms. It's not just a guilty or not guilty. It can be a verdict in a civil case. It can be a ruling in a family law matter. It can be a ruling in a probate case. But accessibility to have a ruling is an absolute fundamental right. That's why we have to be efficient in our court. So that everybody who has a grievance or a case or needs to be heard gets that opportunity. And we can be more efficient in this court. We can be a lot more efficient. As I talked to you earlier about the times that we have open in this court, we can develop calendars that go on in those times. We can stack cases. I'm not afraid to have 3 or 4 trials stacked back to back and make them go. Hold their feet to the fire. That saves the taxpayer money. That gets you your day in court.
The next question then will go to Jeff. You're up. What would you do to reduce the amount of time it takes to resolve civil cases? Now, oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Yeah. My fault. I have moderated. This is supposed to be. That's right. I'm jumping the gun. So I'm going to repeat the question for you. Is equal access to the courts important to you, and if so, why?
Equal access to the courts is the basis of our judicial system for the people. Remember, we have 3 branches of government. Why do we have the judiciary? To make sure that the executive branch isn't too powerful. To make sure the legislative branch isn't too powerful. The judiciary balances both. Makes them all come together. If you've looked at my website, under my judicial philosophy, you'll read that I believe everyone that goes to court just wants their day in court. They want to be heard. They want to present their side of whatever case it might be. How do we accomplish that, considering all of the difficulties and problems that we've discussed thus far? Well, one way is with pro tem judges. A pro tem judge is an attorney with experience who's, I'll say, requested by the court to preside over certain types of cases that attorney's familiar with. Both parties must agree to have their case heard by a pro tem judge. And it's a binding, if they agree, then it's a binding ruling and court hearing. That's one way to eliminate a lot of cases going to the 2 judges' departments. Another way is to have mediation.
30 seconds.
Mediation is so vital in civil cases. Civil cases have a tendency to last forever. Also, small claims courts. Small claims court maximum liability, I believe, has just been increased to $10,000. So individuals that do not have an attorney can address their grievances and their cases before a small claims court judge, and we can have pro tem judges preside over the small claims courts as well. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, now you're up. The only one that was destabilized by the car one apparently was me. Your third question of the lightning round, these are going quick, is what would you do to reduce the amount of time it takes to resolve civil cases? Now, when answering that question, please address alternate dispute resolution, the use of CMC, and the trial calendar issue. Okay?
Everybody knows what CMC is, right? No. Case management conferences. ADR, alternate dispute resolution. This is where the parties can hire, usually it's a retired judge or a retired attorney who's very experienced in a given area. And again, they have to agree to this, and they have that individual that, I'm going to use the term judge / attorney, hear their case and resolve it. The CMC, case management conferences. Case management conferences are set in civil matters to keep the cases moving. Lawyers many times have a tendency to drag their feet. They get bogged down in their own cases. Well, we can have pro tem judges hear those cases. I have heard those cases in the past. I've been a pro tem judge. And again, the parties have to approve it, but it's just to keep the cases moving. We have I think she's the research attorney, sit as a pro tem judge in family law case management cases to keep those cases moving along. The alternate CMC, I think I answered all of them. But the key is we've got to get people to donate their time, and attorneys are willing to do that. Most of us are.
30 seconds.
And with that, I will say thank you very much.
Mr. Hermanson has the floor.
As a civil attorney, the only good case was a resolved case. Because the longer it drug on, the more money it cost me, the more money it cost my client, and the more burdensome it was. So for an individual to have their day in court and get it resolved quickly, fairly, and fiscally sound manner is important. And there are some mechanisms. Let me give an attaboy to the legislature, which is going to be rare tonight, but they developed a process last year which is called an expedited civil process. So they allow for an expedited trial if the parties agree. It lowers the number of jurors from 12 to 8. You have to have 6 approving it, and it puts a cap on how much individual can win and what the bottom amount is they can get. We need to get parties to agree to go through that process. It limits the number of witnesses. It limits the court time that the court is actually engaged in that process. We need to set up a very good mediation process. We need to develop a process either with other counties or peers who will come in and have a meaningful mediation. One in which the clients will listen to the mediator. Also, we need to have strong mandatory settlement conferences where your judge takes the individuals in before trial and talks to the party. See if there's any way that they can resolve it. We have to do that.
30 seconds.
But the most important thing is to make sure that you hold those attorneys' feet to the fire. Make them do that process quickly and efficiently. Every continuance costs the taxpayers money, costs the client money. The most important advice I got as a young attorney was that to recognize that to one of those parties or both of those parties, that case is the most important thing to them at that point in time. And we have to be willing to treat it as such, as judges and attorneys.
Mr. Hermanston still has the floor for our fourth question of the lightning round. Do you think it's appropriate to use attorneys as pro tem judges to hear some cases? And if so, what cases should they hear?
Yes, pro tem judges can be effective in specific types of cases. Where I have seen them most effective are in more administerial duties, in probate cases, where you're moving a case along, where you are checking documents to make sure they've been filled out correctly. I don't think it's important, strike that. I don't think it is good practice to have a pro tem judge making legal decisions that could affect the outcome of that case. I don't believe that is a good practice. But I think in limited circumstances, that can be a useful tool. And that would be something that could be developed. Attorneys with a specific amount of expertise and experience could get on a panel. To be a judge, you have to have 10 years experience. So maybe we have a situation where we say if you're a probate attorney and you have 10 years experience, maybe we put you on a panel to do specific probate cases. Maybe the same with family law, where we just need to move something along. It is an important function and one that I would be interested in looking at.
The question was, do you think it is appropriate to use attorneys as pro tem judges to hear some cases? And if so, what cases should they hear?
Well, I've already somewhat answered that question.
That's right.
I do think,
Amen.
I do think they should, but I also think that, or I'm positive that the attorneys selected to hear a given type of case must have tenure and experience in that given area. In order to use a pro tem judge, there needs to be established requirements, prerequisites, tenure as an attorney, as well as the area in which the attorney is being used. I think it's appropriate to use the appropriate attorney in a small claims matter. That would not take up a judge's time. And there are no attorneys in small claims matters, unless the attorney happens to be one of the parties. So yes, I believe that given a proper structural program, maybe even a class, if you will, by the judges or one of the judges on a given subject area, for instance, like mediation. I went through mediation in 2001 with Judge Sue Harlan. You know, mediation is a vital role, plays a vital role, and that includes settling cases. Settling cases. And if a pro tem judge had training in mediation, maybe the judge can help both parties resolve their case, because if each of them have to give a little, it's been my experience, if each party has to give a little, that's probably somewhere close to reality and the truth and what should really happen, rather than the verdict be lopsided one way or the other. Thank you.
Okay, the final question, which is, again, from the Amador County Bar Association, goes to Mr. Seaton, and then we'll get into a round of public questions, and then we'll come back to a final question from the Bar Association. The fifth one is, beginning October 1st, 2011, the state began returning state prisoners to the county through AB 109. As Superior Court judge, how would you deal with the increased cost and a growing inmate population at the county jail?
Well, as I stated earlier, the judge doesn't run the jail. The judge does not run the jail. That's the sheriff's responsibility. And I think for I'm going to use the term department head, meaning that the judges are in the judicial department, if you will. I think it's inappropriate for a judge to try to dictate or tell another department head what to do. He or she needs to be subtle. Again, as I said earlier, the community leaders have to work together. Just one quick thing, one issue that comes to mind is the issue of, in criminal cases, bail. Bail, the person's charged with a given crime and there's a set bail according to the county bail schedule, which is established by both judges. Well, maybe a person can be released on his or her own recognizance with specific restrictions, to stay away from this person or not go here or not drink alcohol or etc. Rather than keep that person in jail, which is going to occupy a bed space for someone who really needs to be in jail. So the approach that I would take is I would be subtle, I would be tactful, I would work with the community leaders to, specifically the sheriff as this question addresses, and maybe offer assistance
30 seconds.
and ask him how I as a judge or the court can also assist him in controlling that population. One thing also comes to mind, and I mentioned it, the home electronic monitoring program and the sheriff's parole that the sheriff has already implemented in his program. Thank you.
Want me to repeat the question? Okay. Mr. Hermanson has the floor.
Innovation. That's what we need to look at. The worst thing that we could get is a situation in which a judge sentences an individual and have it not happen. There is no room in the jail. The stats from a few weeks ago were there were 115 inmates, 113 were felons. 62% of those were awaiting trial. So we do not have that luxury. Now we have to look at how do we get these individuals to become productive members of our society again, become productive citizens, because we can't just warehouse them. I see the judge's role as being able to facilitate the needs of the community. Not dictating what the sheriff does, but helping to facilitate programs that you could actually have a meaningful sentence to. So that when you sentence somebody, it holds them accountable and provides assistance to the community. Maybe we increase our work programs. Maybe we look at cleaning our creeks, since the youth camp in Pine Grove is going to be ending soon. Maybe we have them start undertaking jobs that need to be done in the county. Cleaning the parks, painting. But we need to think outside the box.
30 seconds.
We need to go into the community, see what the needs are, and see if we can help facilitate that so that we hit that treatment component that is now required under the law.
Yeah.